Hi, good evening, and welcome to day 23 of my 60-day learning challenge. So, yesterday I spent a little bit of time looking into just trying to figure out how I can change up navigation a little bit within this game. And remember, we've been playing with tower defense, which is definitely been fun. There's been so many things that I've been able to play with on this game. I do have it as a small screen right now. Let me make it a little bit bigger. You could probably tell there really hasn't been much that's changed, except something that I actually just realized I'm hiding. But I'll go ahead and open it up for you. We have a little endpoint, and honestly, that's there for a reason. So when we talk about navigation, so if you recall previously, what we did is when this game first started, uh, weeks ago, I hand drew on top of all the dirt, on top of that path that we created, in order to tell the enemies where they need to go. So that was good. I was able to provide them with a very rigid path that they needed to take to get to their destination, which was empty down here at the bottom right. So why did I change that? So there's a reason behind this, and it's because every enemy was walking exactly the same. There was a single path, and if it took 10 seconds for one at a certain speed to get there, if there was another one at a certain speed, it would get there exactly the same. Now, I'm not saying that this new pattern is going to change that a ton, but what it's going to provide is it's going to allow there to be a little more thought processing on being able to draw out their own path for how they're going to get to the end, which I think is really cool. So let me go ahead and just show you in game, and then I'll dig into a little bit of how it's actually built up and what I was able to remove and how this is so powerful. So right now in the game, you're not going to see a whole lot, but let me go ahead and turn some debugging on. So I'm going to turn on paths and navigation, and then part of the enemy, I'm actually going to turn navigation on debugging so you can see what it looks like. And you already have a nice little visual down there. Okay, it's gone, but let's go ahead and do this again. So if I start the game now, all of those little blue tiles have been drawn out on all of the paths, on all the same terrain that is being used for drawing the path. So if you remember, went through and drew out every single one and how all of those tiles are mapping together, how they're looking. And I'm able to take advantage with the very similar tooling to draw out where the navigation pathing is going to be. So let's dig into that just a little bit more, because that may not make a ton of sense, but once I show it, it's going to make more sense. But if you look at these guys, as they're navigating, as they're walking through, they're adding the points down. Now, when I was saying earlier that they don't really have the option to make up their own path in the previous, but now they can, they are still making the most optimal path from point A to point B. That is what we are doing now. They all do have a mind of their own. I understand it's not the best way to say it, but I'm going to show a little bit just by moving the base down here and showing how they're actually going to get from point A to point B. And when I say base, I'm talking about the little Godot header down here. So I'm going to go into code, not code. I'm going to go ahead and go to the level itself. Let's go to 2D. And I want you to watch down here at the bottom. The little head here, I'm going to move it, and we're going to see the actual pathing change. Now I have to change this a little bit because this is the actual point down here. But their final destination is going to be where that point is. So you see down here, I wish you could see where my finger is pointing, not just the mouse. But the final destination has changed because now I'm able to say where the final point is. Now, let's add a little better visual than that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to draw some new terrain here. So let's see if that updates live and see how that's actually going to affect the game. So I'm going to just ruin the ID experience here for a little minute, and I'm cool with that. Let's go up here to the tile. Let's go to the tile map, and we're going to go into, let's go to tile set. We don't want to do tile set, we want to do terrain. Tile map, terrains, terrain 0. And we're going to grab that guy, and I'm going to shortcut this a little bit. So let's get that in here. Okay. Take a look at that. So because I was able to draw a new map in there, the enemies have now recalculated where they wanted everything to be. Okay. That's cool. So what? Well, let me make sure that my guy doesn't die. Let's move him up here. And right there. And now all of a sudden, they're redrawing where they're going. Now, this, again, is not perfect because all of the ones down below that are still continuing on that old path are only going on the old path because I'm passing coordinates. I don't want to have to recalculate every time where that base is because the base normally does not move. So the things that they're doing is they're recalculating what the best path is because maybe I throw an obstacle, something that they can't avoid, or something they have to avoid, something that is just impenetrable by them, or something like that. So there's plenty of stuff that are reasons why they have to recalculate. But now this allows us to, again, have the thought of how they want to get from point A to point B in the best possible way. So maybe there's a dynamic map that I drop them up on the top left, top right. They figure out how to get there. I think that's really cool. So let's go ahead and take it back how it was. And you see they're going to go ahead and reset. Now, health is back at 1. We'll probably end up dying in this one, and that's okay. But this is really cool. The point of where I'm having everything spawn, I'm going to go ahead and close out of the game and go ahead and bring this up. I've expanded the spawn area just a little bit. And as I was mentioning before, one thing that I'm going to do is I have a point here. I'm going to have them kind of spawn in this area. Right now, they're just spawning on the point, and it's working. I think that's fine. But to add a little bit additional staggering, I'm just going to put them within that area and make them just kind of find their way out of there. Whatever. I think it's fun. Why not? So that's going to be enemy spawn, and that's this point right in here. So if I wanted to, we could flip the two around. Let me get out of that. Let me grab this guy. Oh, come on. It's not what I want to do. Enemy spawn. All right. I always have the absolute worst time trying to get... There we go. All right. So let's grab enemy spawn. Let's move you. Oh, come on. All right. I have the worst time with these things, but that's okay. But so what if I wanted to swap around enemy spawn? I'm going to throw it out here. We'll go ahead and start them in there. And I want to put the base over here. Well, so that's pretty easy. That's pretty cool. So now I have the enemies spawning over on the bottom right-hand side. So why is this important? When I create waves, when I create new maps, everything is completely dynamic now. Everything can just kind of be thrown down. Now, again, the map is a little big. They're walking on the grass. Let me see if I can find my mouse. They're walking on the grass. It feels illegal, but it's fine. They're making it to the grass. I can just extend it out. But now I can build maps, and I don't have to think too hard about where the starting point is and where the ending point is. The enemies will find a way. Anyways, I thought this was really cool. I think this is cool. Outside of the pathing, I loved that pathing initially when I built up where I got to draw the line, where I had the opportunity to draw the line, but I did not like what I had to do. So when I'm talking, let me explain that one a little bit more. So when you throw a path down, let's go to the actual what that path looks like. So if I if I go into we are in level 1. Nope, we want to come down here. We need to go into the scene. If we go into the entity, we go into the enemy, and then we go into here. We now have this navigation. If I go into scene, we have what I call the stage path. Remember, the stage path is exactly what it shows on here. Now, the stage path is going to be this whole path, and this is where I think I messed up. Because what I was doing logically is every time I threw an enemy down, I threw a path and a follow down. When instead, what I should have been doing is just replicating this and putting the enemy below it. So that path follow has a progress, and that's over here on the right-hand side, which allows us to say, where is the enemy? Where is the enemy at any given time? Now, this helped tremendously when I wanted to see the enemy that was furthest on the path, which is one of the 3 things that we ended up saying for some of our directives for which enemy to actually start attacking. That's something that we coded into the towers. When the nearest enemy, the furthest along enemy, the least furthest along enemy, the highest health, lowest health, if you remember any of those drop downs. So what I ended up doing was I created a path and a path follow 2D for each of those. Did not hurt performance. I'm very happy about that. But I don't think I would have expected it to. But it's a lot of unnecessary stuff. Again, I could have thrown path down once, and I could have thrown a path follow down for each of the enemies. So where do we go from here? Now, that's a very interesting question, because I have my enemies following a path that's dynamic. Sorry, jumping straight to next, because I think I've kind of torn this one apart a little bit much. So where do we go from here? We have the enemies spawning in a base. We have the enemies walking through here. I need to add a little bit of something to the stage itself. I've actually been writing out a bit of how I can start taking a look at a state manager, a state machine for the actual wave management. So you remember I was trying to use the state machine for the actual tower itself. I have 2 states. It's shooting or it's not. So it's idle or it sees an enemy. Those are the only 2 states, and I did not feel good about it. But for a wave, when you start this game, let's talk about that. This is kind of some of the stuff that I'm trying to figure out in my head. I'm trying to write down. I'm trying to see. As a user, I anticipate that I'm going to have a little bit of extra time at the beginning simply to prepare. I anticipate that these towers are not going to be here. I don't want them here. I want to delete these towers and ask the user to prepare themselves for these waves. And then they get currency, and then they have to prepare themselves for what's to come. So I need to build on the stages, and the user needs to build there to be able to defend themselves. So kind of the game loop is is there an upcome? Is there I say wave, I mean level, but there are waves in the level. For an upcoming wave, or is there an upcoming wave? Yes, give them 30 seconds of prep time. If there's not an upcoming wave, it's done. Now, as part of that 30 seconds, also providing some sort of preview of what's to come. So there's a little bit of that I'm kind of mentally putting down. I think there's a few things. One, this tile map layer. really feels like something that can just kind of be thrown into here in a good way. And I think that's fine. The tile map layer can be something built and dropped in. So this is really the level wrapper. This has everything. And we just kind of build on it. And then there's also the game state that gets loaded in with an array of waves or a list of waves, however we end up doing it, with all the enemies listed, and then we figure out how to stagger them in. Or do we just blast them all at once? I don't know. This is a little bit of thinking. And then also, as you get into the different waves, do I want, if I put 50 different types of towers, do I open up all 50 types of towers at first? And they just have to make the money to get them? Or do we stagger them in and have the user unlock them with progress in the levels? So anyways, those are some of the things kind of going through my head right now. I think waves are going to be next. I think that has to happen. And I think it's right there. Just with what I said, moving that table, the tower map layer out, saying where does the base have to sit. So some of those things can just be programmatic. And quite honestly, I'm excited about it. But as part of that game state, the state machine, before wave is happening. If the player dies, there's another state for that. If the player survives, there's a state for what the next one is. Is that starting over and giving them the start of the wave preparation state? Or if there's not one, do we give them a game over? So, there we go. So I hope you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed building this up. If you'd like to know more about how I set it up, I know I glazed over a lot. I get pretty excited and I just kind of get into rambling. Please give me feedback. Please ask me questions. I'm definitely interested in answering them the best I can. And if I don't know, let's learn it together. So anyways, thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.